After 155 hours and around 6 months, a little over 6 months, I've completed The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Finally saw the credits roll last night after just a long time with the game and doing something I don't think I've ever done consciously. And I was trying to think about how to structure this recording, but I'm just going to do it freeform because I don't really, if you want to hear what I have to say about the game, if you haven't played it or if you haven't finished it, or if you want to play it, you're not sure about it, then this is going to be a typical review where I give a score or something like that. I don't think those things really matter anymore. It's just going to be kind of my experience with it and how playing this game for such a long time, especially in a world where there's basically a must-play game. If it's not new, then it's old, as in I don't have a backlog of games anymore. I got rid of all my games earlier this year, sold them all literally. But yeah, there's always something to play that's new to you and novel. So it's really different what I did with this game. And then I'll tell you how I played it and then what I got out of it. That's really how I'm going to structure this kind of dump. So Tears of the Kingdom originally came out in May of 2023. And actually I didn't get it when it came out. I was actually living in Japan when it came out. Which is an interesting, now that I think about it, it's an interesting little aspect of this story. But I was living in Japan, didn't get it on launch. I rarely get games on launch these days. I'm usually playing something else, and I really don't play games as much as I used to anymore. I used to be an hour a night type of guy, just when I was younger. It was just, it felt like a good way. I'd rather be playing a game than watching a TV show or something. But even now, I basically only play on the weekends. I might get some time, maybe 25 minutes or something on a weeknight, but it's usually on the weekends where I do most of my gaming. So I think that is what, why'd you play the game for 6 months? It's probably because of that. And for a lot of weekends, I just wasn't playing. Yeah, just doing too much business stuff and writing and games. And I've been doing a lot more reading too. And I've talked about this before with me, to where games and reading tend to have an inverse relationship. The more I game, the less I read. The more I read, the less I game. And I've been reading a lot more this year. I mean, if you go back on this channel, a couple of weeks, you'll find my video on Infinite Jest. I spent 5 months reading Infinite Jest, and I didn't finish it, by the way. I got far, though. I got to about page 800 something. But anyway, so my wife buys me the game for my birthday in 2024. I think it was 2024. Yeah. And I did not play it. It was one of those things, same deal. Just was not gaming. So I didn't start to play it until late last year, so late 2024. So around December, something like that. And that brings me to the biggest decision that I made for playing this game, was that this is the first game that I've completely played through in a foreign language. I decided to play Tears of the Kingdom completely in Japanese. And I remember I had started this when I got the game. Actually, maybe I did get it in around release, because I remember I had it and I booted it up. And since I was living in Japan at the time, I was like, well, I want to improve my Japanese. So, and my Japanese is high enough to where a game, it was the just out of reach type of goal, to where, I could do this. I could actually beat this game in Japanese. I don't recommend this if you're a complete beginner. You'd just be too frustrated. But because I was still frustrated, and I've been studying Japanese for a long time. So I remember booting it up and I couldn't even get past the first area because, I mean, the language barrier. And you don't really think about this when you're playing a game in your foreign language, but there's a lot of reading. A lot. You have items, and then in the beginning, there's a lot of tutorial stuff. You don't really know the buttons or how to play. And then I remember I had a broken controller too. There's another reason I didn't play it when I first got it, because I was like, I literally am like throwing myself off of the first Sky Island because my stupid controller is drifting and telling me to dive off the mountain when you're not supposed to do that at the beginning. So trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out what items mean, where to go, what to do. Especially in an open world, it's not a linear game at all, and so you need to be able to read. And so I was doing it in Japanese, and so it was just too tough. I'd play for an hour and get like 3 items or something because I was trying to decipher the kanji and read it, and it was a lot. So I dropped it. Came back to it in December and was ready to go full in. And if you're wondering how I was reading as I was going, I was just basically using my phone, using Google Translate. They have especially with AI now, Google Translate, any translator, they're all good, especially with AI. And so I was just using the camera function, and I didn't even have to take pictures. I just kind of held it up and it would translate. And while this is much more efficient than the old days of gaming in foreign languages where you'd have to stop and look up words and it was really slow, this was just slow instead of very slow. Still slow though, and that's another thing that contributed to my bloated playtime. 155 hours, probably a good 10 or 20 of those hours is me, looking up kanji and x-raying this Japanese and trying to read it, or just trying to read through kanji. But I persevered. And the more that I stayed with it, especially in the beginning when it's very story heavy, of course I didn't get the whole story, and I think that was one of the disadvantages of doing this, is that you do miss out on the story. Because obviously a lot of the terminology, even though I think this is a very good game to do this activity with, because the story is very simplistic. I've been playing Legend of Zelda games. My first Legend of Zelda games, everybody knows their first. Mine was A Link to the Past. So that tells you how old I am, probably. So I've been playing Zelda games for a long time, and it typically boils down to 3 things, and you know what they are. I don't probably have to even say them, but I'll say them anyway. It's save Princess Zelda, defeat Ganon, save the world. It's a classic story, and honestly, I knew without really even having done much research on the game or watched a lot of YouTube videos. I just knew that that's what the story was, and I was right. It hasn't changed. I mean, like, I knew it so well that I was fighting the last boss, and my wife was all like, "Oh my God, it's so big!" They always have the grand last boss, and I get to the last like 1/8 of his power bar, or maybe the last quarter, and I knew, I was like, because a lot of modern games, they do. Like, it's not like old school to where the boss is just like the final exam and the boss is just fucking hard as nuts and he's gonna beat your ass, and if you're not ready, then God help you, get ready to start over. No. Modern games, they do this thing where it's very more like cinematic. So they'll have like the final exam and they'll have the real last boss. And I knew like the real last boss was obviously Ganondorf, like, duh. So after you fight Swole Ganondorf, he's swole, man. Dude been pushing weights in Tears of the Kingdom. After you fight him, that's the final boss. And then they had the showcase final boss where, you get to fight with the Guardians and all this stuff. And then I knew, like, the last boss, the final phase, is like it's kind of like a reward. It's not meant to be hard. It's meant to just kind of show off a mechanic, or it's meant to, tie up. It's more story beat than a gameplay focused. And I got to that point and I was like, yep, got to finish with the Master Sword. And I didn't even waste time. As soon as I got to that phase, I just knew, like, okay, just fly in his face and then bust it up with the Master Sword. And I was right. So anyway, point is, these games haven't changed a lot as far as narratively. And that's what made this a good choice for playing in another language. That, and it's actually very well balanced for older and younger players as well. I mean, I can't think of a game that is complex in many ways, but then it's also accessible. And I think that's one of the beauties of this game, Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, is that they both ride that line. Because I'd argue, like, something like Super Mario Odyssey or Super Mario in general, it's more of a kid's game. It's run, jump, collect stuff, and there's not really a story. There is, but not really. That type of thing. But with Zelda games, there is a complexity there as far as the gameplay is concerned. Especially in something like Tears of the Kingdom, where you just kind of get thrown into the world, and you got to figure out where to go, what to do, and the way they balance it, and still guide you, but give you that type of freedom to explore, because that's that's a big part of the game, is exploration and discovery. And so, yeah, they do a really good job of that. So this brings me back to the language thing, because they have the ofurigana, which is the small characters over the kanji, which helps younger players read. And if you've ever tried to learn Japanese, one of the hardest parts is the three writing systems. And I've studied a lot of Chinese. I've studied many different languages. And Japanese is still just one of the hardest, just because you have the three different writing systems. They use all three of them all the time. It flows in and out, especially in something like Tears of the Kingdom, where in Japanese, there's a lot of stylistic choices. So some characters use a lot of katakana just because it's considered just different and a little bit edgy and a little bit weird. And so you got to know katakana. Obviously, hiragana and kanji, they're just the bread and butter of the language. So every character uses hiragana and kanji, so you need to be able to read those. And I felt like playing it with this game allowed me to. And then that's another thing, like just knowing what to do and where to go. Because, it's fine if you can get through cutscenes with characters or whatever, but then if you don't know what the fuck to do, then you can't play the game. And this game, like a lot of games that are more for kids, and modern games too, just in general for convenience, they remind you of, okay, here's what your task is, here's what you're supposed to be doing. You have the map, okay, I'm heading to this direction. It doesn't really matter what it's called. Even if I can't read it, I can still play the game. I can still enjoy it. And that's what it was for me. Even though it was still hard. It was still very challenging playing the entire game in Japanese. And as I mentioned before, the story I kind of missed out on, but I knew just from playing Breath of the Wild and the design of that game that the story was going to be similar, if not, I don't know. It's like I said, it's defeat Ganon, save the princess, save the world. And it was basically that. And I'd say that was probably my least favorite part of this game, is the story. And I know I'm saying that as having played it in Japanese, so I didn't get all the nuance of the story. But the structure of it was basically Breath of the Wild again, to the point to where you literally go back to the same places and pretty much do the same things with, obviously some variations that you did in Breath of the Wild. And then the fact that the main story quest, a lot of it is repeated, like motifs, repeated structure. It's the same. I actually felt like Breath of the Wild's story was better in the sense that it had a little bit more variety. And maybe it's because it hadn't been done before, but this one was blatantly like, okay, this was just kind of a copy and paste job. It felt like structurally. It's different, of course. The story has different characters, and the world is the same, but mostly. But yeah, I felt like it was perfect to play in Japanese because I wasn't expecting anything groundbreaking from the story. So we'll talk a little bit about gameplay. Gameplay is where I think this game just nails it, just kills it. It's just fun to play because you're always getting something. You're always finding new items or discovering a new location or discovering a new side quest, and then you can use the tools that you have in a fun way. The biggest addition in this one was the Zona gear. It was the Zonai. You could customize weapons and you could customize weapons. You customize weapons. You can make different constructions with different gears and vehicles. And that gets me to a little bit of the difficulty of this game. This game is hard. This is a hard game. I mean, I think unlike Breath of the Wild felt like a little bit more accessible. But this game, I was dying into like 15, 20 hours in because you're just really weak and you don't have the stamina. You don't have the gear. Your weapons break every 5 seconds. You're constantly picking up new shitty ones. And it really wasn't until I unlocked the Master Sword, like, I don't know, that was probably like, looking at my time, it was probably like 80, 90 hours in. It was a while before I found the Master Sword. It's only when you do that the game becomes a lot more fun because you're not constantly scrambling for weapons and your gear is weak and it sucks and you're getting knocked down even by easy enemies. They can just run over you because you're so weak. And I was never really a big fan of crafting in games. I know some people just go nuts for crafting. They can spend hours just making their own stuff and coming up with things, and it's fun to them. For me, it's always been kind of a sideshow, like, and here it's no different. I knew that the crafting, when it didn't really show up in the last fight, that you needed to use it, then I knew it's very gimmicky, and Nintendo's kind of known for this. They're known for every console era, every Zelda game too. They all have kind of this gimmick of, okay, what are we going to structure this game around? And this one was the Zonai stuff. I think just there's a lot of problems with it, and I think it's just it's too hard to use it practically in the beginning, especially if you're playing the game casually and you don't plan on doing much of the side content, then you're not going to really be able to get the most out of it because it just takes too much energy. Like, you have to go find these crystals, you have to go refine them to do this, to get your battery up, to be able to do anything practical. You have to find the little parts to put them together, and those are scattered in these little like gumball machine type things. I just found like the whole system to be like, this is not useful. And then this is not useful and this is not fun. And then when you have to use it, like in the shrines, it's very linear and straightforward. And so like my experience of it was just like, okay, you got a few cool mechanics, but in the shrine, to get through it, you have to basically use it in this way. There's some leeway in some shrines. You can kind of get creative later on when you have more just experience, like understanding the different ways that the various components can be constructed. But I just felt like the whole system just felt kind of tacked on. It's not very practical in a battle sense. It's just too slow to put stuff together and then turn it on and then the battery runs out. Like, I didn't like it. And I felt like this is probably the worst part of the game for me, because it's just, I felt like it could have, like I said, they implemented it in a smart way to where it's accessible, and that's what you see online. You see people building this crazy stuff, but what they don't tell you is that that person has probably put hundreds of hours into the game, and you do get to where you can basically build whatever you want, and it lasts. Your battery use is irrelevant because you have so much battery. And then, of course, you've already explored the world. But when you're playing the game, I just found it to be an annoying. Like, every time I had to use the Ultra Hand to move something or construct something to get past an obstacle or whatever in an area, I would just like, ugh, I'd rather just walk over there or glide over there or ride my horse, which, yeah, the horses, I was kind of frustrated about that too, because they still do have the stables, but then once you warp somewhere, your horse is kind of stuck there. So unless you go back to another stable, then you can't use the horse. And of course, you can only use the horse like your main horses. You can find like some stall horses, some skeleton horses in the underground, but you can only use your main horses on the overworld, on the surface. So I was like, damn, horses got nerfed like crazy. And it makes sense because they want you to use the Zonai gear. You know, if they had it to where you could use a horse everywhere, then maybe you wouldn't use the Zonai gear. I wouldn't have. I would, give me a horse. So yeah, I think that was probably the worst part of the game for me. Yeah, can't really say much good about it. But I think the big thing that kept me playing was just the different feelings I'd get with the different parts of the world. I mean, and I felt this in Breath of the Wild, but it's just a truly evolving experience, and it's very layered. And I think that hurt this game as well. It hurt it because Breath of the Wild, like I said, it's more of like it's very more beginner friendly as far as relatively, right? It still can be tough in the beginning too. But compared to this one, like another annoying thing in this game was the how to level up your armor. So in Breath of the Wild, all you had to do is go find the stuff, and then you take it to the fairy fountains, and then they'd upgrade you. Tears of the Kingdom added the you have to pay for the upgrades. So this is a natural gating thing, because in the beginning you don't have enough stuff to have the money to be able to upgrade your armor, but then it really sucks late game when you're strong enough, you're powerful, but then you need to go back and basically farm to find the items you need to upgrade your armor. So if you find, like, it took me a long time to find the barbarian set that increases your attack. I just didn't find it. And then I found 2 parts of it, and I was like, cool, I want to use this now. But shit, I gotta level it up. And it needs like Lionel horns or like harder enemies to level it up, because obviously that's a good stat boost. And the only way to do that is to go farm the enemies that drop those parts, which is really annoying because, Lionels are pretty rare. They're kind of scarce. And so you keep having to go back and fight the same ones, or it just turns very grindy really fast. And I felt like that was another disappointing thing with the game, is that there's a lot of grinding in this game. Like, you always I call it ABCs. Always be collecting. And I thought that there would be some item, and maybe there is some item that would just automatically pick up things for you. And this is another thing that stopped me from using the Zona gear, because you can't pick shit up when you're on the Zona gear. Unless you design it in such a way. I'm sure you could design something to where you could have mobility, but then you can still collect things. But yeah, it was just, I was like, damn, everything I always need to be collecting. And I think that's the way they want the game to be played, because honestly, the map is big enough to where when I beat the game, I had 53% done. I have 47% left. And there's still a lot of the map I haven't explored, and there's still a lot to see. So I think that's the way the game's meant to be played. Like, going around to different areas, and then obviously you run into different enemies and creatures that you can fight. And then when you fight them, then you harvest their items, and then you go and level up. I think that's the way the designers want people to play the game. But then it's also like you can play it any way you want. So you end up with this kind of system to where it's really hard to get permanently strong in the game until like really, really, really late game, when you can just kind of roll over everybody, and traversal is no longer a problem, and then you can just kind of go and do whatever you want. It's kind of a reward. But back to the just the different feels of this game, as far as just the environments and just the sheer variety of activities you can do, and the exploration. The underground, I've seen a few criticisms of it, and it is pretty empty for the most part. But I felt like, even with its vast kind of emptiness, like cave-like feeling, it still provides a good place for exploration. It's still, in the beginning, it's so nerve-wracking to go down there, and it's dark. You can't see. It just goes on forever. You're supply issues, and then if you get hit by gloom stuff, then you can't heal, and it's really nasty. The first, I'd say 50 hours, anytime you go down there, you're like, holy shit, I got to get ready. And it's just going to take time, because it's slow moving across that terrain, and they really made you work for that experience. And I think that surprised everybody that they included such a vast area, since Hyrule is already so big. But then they included the underground, which I liked it. I liked the vibe of it. I liked that there was a whole new area to explore, with kind of hidden dangers and special items and things like that. And I feel like most of it is just optional. But if you miss it, then you're missing a big part of what makes Tears of the Kingdom special, is that addition, because that is the new world in Tears of the Kingdom. I think a lot of people focused on just how Hyrule felt rehashed, and it didn't feel fresh, because it's basically the same thing. The Sky Islands were kind of a tease that didn't really. Yeah, I feel like that was probably second to the Zona gear customization. I think the Sky Islands was one of the worst parts of the game too, just because they don't really do anything. Like, and they're just very repetitive. They're hard to explore because you have to use this stupid Zona gear. You have to fly around or find some way to boost or launch or whatever to get to these different islands. And every time I had to go up there to do stuff, I was just like, fuck, I don't like this. It's too hard to get around. Like, and then a lot of the sky assets are the same. which was disappointing because, in the trailers for Tears of the Kingdom, like that is literally, they kind of did like a Skyward Sword type of thing to where he's over the clouds and he's kneeling on these sky pillars, and it looks like it's going to be a huge part of the game. It looks like it narrative wise and all these different things, but it's not really a big part of the story as far as I know, but it could have been because I played it in Japanese. What do I know? But it's, there's not a lot to explore. It's very hard to explore up there because you have to, especially early to mid game, you just don't have the tools. Your battery runs out, your stamina sucks, and it's just too hard to get around. There's not enough variety in not just the islands in themselves, but like the stuff up there. It's like the same things over and over. And yeah, I thought that was lousy. I was just like, this is kind of disappointing with these islands. I think the last thing I want to touch on, because I don't want this to be too long, is just this trend that I'm doing with media. Take a sip of coffee. Trend that I'm trying to do with media these days is I'm trying to spend more time on things that I like instead of just flitting between different media so fast. I did this with Infinite Jest, reading it for 5 months. I'm actually rereading a book now, which is something I haven't done. Man, I haven't reread a book in probably like 10 years. No, it's longer than that, because that was the first time read for, I'm thinking of when I read Atlas Shrugged, but that was the first time I'd read that. But there's so much new stuff every day. Like literally, there's fucking millions of YouTube videos. There's comics. There's stuff on the web. There's social media content. Then there's books. There's movies. There's just we're drowning in entertainment. There's a lot of it. And as a creator myself, as a writer mostly, I want more people to spend more time with the stuff that I create, instead of just going to the next thing. And so I think that's part of the reason why I'm spending more time. The second reason is it definitely saves a lot of money. And my wife was like, I'm glad I got to finish the game, because she's been seeing me playing it off and on for the past several months, and she was like, man, that's good value for money. You pay, was it $70 or something for the game, but then you get 155 hours out of it, 6 months. That's really good value for money. And this goes back to this kind of underlying principle that I really believe to be true in my life, and I've found it to be true. It's like the more time that you spend with something, the more precious it becomes. And it's not just because, obviously you're going to see more of it, but it's also because when you pour attention into something, it gives it back by, you basically imprint yourself onto the thing and your experience of it. And it gives it back to you in some way. Whether it's a game, a book, a movie, a relationship. I think of that too. I think we live in just a culture that's very disposable, and where you can always get something new. I'm talking people and objects, possessions, whatever. It's easy to get new stuff. It's easy to start something new. But when you stay with it for long enough, that's the only way to really see the true beauty of something. It's the only way to really experience it in a way that you can see how you've grown, that you can see how you've changed your perspectives, and really the deepest, the richest part of that experience is going to be towards the later stages of interacting with that person or possession or media. I believe this to be true. And I think the Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom is a remarkable example of that, because it is amazingly hard and frustrating in the beginning. I'd say the first 10 or 15 hours are brutal. You die so much, especially with those little 3 hearts, and you don't, you're trying to figure out how to play the game and all this stuff. But as you kind of peel back the layers of the game, and you make your way around the world, and you begin to see more of it, then it just gives back to you more and more. It's to the point to where yesterday when I was playing, I think I unlocked like 5 or 6 light roots, and I found shrines. I was just like, okay, let me just go get these items because I knew they were there. And I thought, I was like, damn, that was 3-4 months ago, that was impossible. It was just kind of this journey of growth. And it's the same with, like, I started this recording with why I played this game in a different language. And it was that too. I noticed my Japanese getting smoother because I would read out loud occasionally when I had the time. And of course, my vocabulary grew. It's just, there were so many good things about this experience that, yeah, it's kind of sad to see it come to the end. But yeah, I think I'm ready to move on after 6 months of playing it. But I think that's all I have to say about Tears of the Kingdom. I liked the game. I thought it was great. I basically compare it like this: like, it's equivalent to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, if you're old enough to appreciate this analogy. Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask. I think that's when I think of Tears of the Kingdom, where it sits. Ocarina of Time, blockbuster, very accessible. Tons of people played it. Majora's Mask, not so much. A lot more niche. Majora's Mask is one of those games that, of course, it got critical acclaim when it came out back in 2000, but people didn't like it as much because it was too weird. It's too, the structure. It's, once again, the difficulty level, because of the 3-day time cap, and you're constantly trying to reset time, and what does that mean? And then you got to figure out where to go. It's a hard game. It's very hard. If you in hindsight, when you don't know where to go and you first time playing. Same thing with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild, same, very accessible, fun, huge open world. And then Tears of the Kingdom, same as Majora's Mask, darker story, more difficult gameplay, but more rewarding in the sense that the systems are deeper, just like with the masks. I remember I didn't play Majora's Mask until the 3DS version. I never played it on N64, even though my brother had it, but I never played it. But it was the same thing, to where that game, the more you spend time with it, the more the layers kind of peel, and then you're like, oh, this is what this mask does, and then this mask lets you unlock that mask, and so on. Tears of the Kingdom, exact same way. Still critically a great game, but much more difficult to get into, much more difficult to enjoy, and just kind of a darker vibe with it, especially with the underground. So I'm going to end this. I don't usually do reviews or reflections very often, because obviously if I'm spending 6 months playing a game, 5 months reading a book, then it's just going to take me a long time to get to a stage of completion with the game. But I feel satisfied with the time that I put into Tears of the Kingdom. I might even play it a little bit more. There's still a lot to uncover, but I'm also ready to move on. I feel like I've gotten what I wanted and what I needed shortly out of this process. But what did you think? Did you play Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom? Did you like it? Are you a big Zelda person? Let me know in the comments what you thought about the game. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.